What if one of the most revered figures in epic literature was, first and foremost, a masterful politician? Today, we're peeling back the layers of divinity that surround Rama to see if we can find the Iron Age prince hiding underneath.
And the whole idea here is based on this one powerful thought. The goal isn't to diminish Rama, not at all. It's to understand the historical man who might have existed before the myth we know today was built around him. So, that leads us to the big question we're exploring. What happens if we read the Ramayana's core conflict, not just as a cosmic battle between good and evil, but as a very real, very human power struggle for a throne? Okay, so to even begin to see Rama as a political figure, we first have to understand the world this interpretation places him in. Let's set the stage. You see, the argument here is that the original story wasn't about a god coming down to become king. Nope. It was about a human prince, an heir, who had to navigate these incredibly dangerous political waters where his life was, quite literally, always on the line.
And to really get what Rama was up against, you have to understand the kingdom he was supposed to inherit. Kosala, ruled by his father Dasharatha, was not the stable, powerful empire you might be picturing.
And this is where it gets super interesting. Look at this contrast. On one hand, the kingdom had all the symbols of power, right? It had land, a long-ruling family, religious authority. But on the other hand, it lacked the basic machinery of a state. There was no clear law saying who gets the throne, no police force, no professional army. That made the whole system incredibly shaky. And here's the absolute crucial point. Just because Rama was the eldest son, that didn't guarantee him a thing. Succession was this dangerous political game. With all these different queens and their sons creating rival factions, the court was a total minefield. And back then, losing that game often meant losing your life. All right, so this brings us to one of the most famous parts of the whole story, Rama's exile. Now, if you look at this through a historical lens, the event starts to look less like a tragedy and more like a really shrewd political move.
Of course, when we read the story today, we see this virtuous hero getting unjustly banished, and we feel the tragedy of it all. It just feels so wrong, like something that needs to be fixed.
But what if you put yourself in the shoes of a ruler who's just trying to hold a fragile kingdom together? Well, from that perspective, exile was actually the most logical and maybe the safest option on the table. It was a strategy, not just a punishment.
I mean, just look at the cold, hard logic here. Step 1, you get Rama out of the picture, you avoid a devastating civil war. Step 2, you neutralize a really powerful rival without a messy and unpopular execution. And Step 3, the ruling family, the dynasty itself, doesn't self-destruct. It was a politically brilliant, if pretty harsh solution.
So what was Rama actually doing for 14 years out in the forest? Well, through this historical lens, we can see he wasn't just sitting around and meditating. He was actively and smartly preparing for his return to power.
He was acting exactly like a king in waiting. Think about it. He's out there making alliances with tribes on the edge of the kingdom. He's acting as a judge and settling their disputes, and he's building a loyal following, an army even. He was proving he could rule long before he ever had a palace or a crown.
And hey, even his marriage to Sita starts to look like a classic piece of statecraft. This was a textbook political alliance. Kosala gets a powerful ally in the east, which helps Rama's claim to the throne, and Mithila gets military security. It's a win-win for both kingdoms. Okay, this right here is such a critical point. Why is Rama so obsessed with dharma, with proper conduct? Because in a kingdom that has no police force, no written laws, the king's personal virtue is the entire system of government. His reputation for being fair and just and restrained, that was his most powerful political tool. It's how you held everything together.
So if Rama was a political actor, when exactly did all this happen? Well, this interpretation argues that his specific political profile fits one historical period perfectly, almost like a key fitting into a lock.
And when you look at the evidence laid out like this, it's pretty clear. The political world Rama moves in, it just doesn't work in other eras. It's not a simple tribal society, but it's definitely not a huge empire with a complex government like the Mauryan. These specific conditions, a kingdom with territory but basically no institutions, point directly to the early Indian Iron Age.
So what's the bottom line here? The big takeaway from this analysis is that the story of Rama might have begun not with a god, but with a real historical prince. A masterful politician who successfully navigated a succession crisis, who used his exile to build power, and who understood that in his time, personal virtue was the ultimate political weapon. The divinity, this argument suggests, was a layer that got added much, much later.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about, doesn't it? If the prince was a savvy politician, what does that reveal about the god he became? Seeing the human operator within the epic hero doesn't have to diminish the story. In fact, it might just make the journey from a fragile throne to a divine one that much more remarkable.